You see the iconic view there, the start line. I said it in the preview before we were on air, Ben, but I think this is just one of the most iconic views in all of sport, is that mad dash at the beginning of a great cross-country race, and such a storied and nostalgic, I like that word there, storied program here, as well as this 39th edition. Roy Griak, such a legend there at Minnesota, and again, yourself a Minnesota alum, you had a little bit of success there and beyond, so pretty cool to be able to come back and give your insight here, the Golden Gophers course.
Yeah, I think I love that idea of that iconic screen of everybody trying to find their place. I think there's a trick to running well here at the Roy Griak, and it's the idea of being patient. I think we saw that last year. But if you can be as patient as you can,
well, a little more patience will be required as these athletes are tensed, and now they are off, just like the horse races where they let them go, and surprisingly restrained, I'd say, here on the straightaway, but you're exactly right, 8K to run, so no need for a complete mad dash. We'll see those colorful jerseys get interspersed here shortly. Keep an eye again on the blue of CBU and the distinct yellow and brown of Wyoming. In addition, of course, to Minnesota there, but we'll get things shaken out. Over 8,000 meters, Ben. What is the mindset? Which you mentioned patience, but there's some hills here. This Griak course, again, you know it well. What is Coach saying to these athletes here as a team to go not just for the individual title, but the team title as well?
You know, I think you kind of want to find your teammates and you want to talk. You got a lot of racing ahead. We got 8K of racing. The race is going to ebb and flow a little bit. As you can see, it's just not that big a group, right? And the better athletes are going to kind of find their way to the front when they need to. But realistically, it's bringing that whole team together and kind of working together and see how people feel. And I think that's what coaches are kind of looking for in these early days of racing, is how do my guys actually work together.
Well, out to the early lead there, the Jackrabbits, South Dakota State in their distinct kit. But again, very early goings. The course looks very good here. We weren't sure, again, even a week plus ago, looking at the weather conditions, thinking that it may be rainy. You know, I think it ended up pretty solid here as far as weather goes. Sure, maybe a little humid, but overall, I think in St. Paul this time of year, pretty good conditions.
Yeah, Minnesota can be so tricky this time of year. Either it's perfect, or it's a blizzard, or it's 105 degrees. But today, based on what we can see, I think it looks really nice.
Well, we've talked about the team battle, but of course the individual will be a source of pride as well. And don't count out really any individual. There is patience, but so much can happen. It can be a little deceptive as well, Ben. On the track, we can get, we'll get splits here at the mile and a few other spots during this race, but on the track, you can kind of get a visual and see where everybody is, but it's a little tougher to visualize. So we'll go to our athletic course tracker here, which is a very cool graphic that we can give you a visual of. You see the ups and downs coming through this Les Bolstad golf course. And when we take a look at that course tracker, you'll have an idea of really where we are in the twists and turns and those hills as well. I think that as you come in to your various curves, that has to be in the back of your mind where those hills are.
Yeah, we're gonna ebb and flow all the way around this golf course and kind of twist and turn, but I'll just say that it's kind of bold running to start making that gap. I'm gonna say the plan isn't gonna work out on this one a little bit. I'm gonna be bold and say that just because that pack is still right there. He hasn't really made that gap as much as he probably needs. And we're early, but it seems like kind of that front peloton has already kind of taken notice that there's somebody up front.
Out in front again. This is South Dakota State. And there is something to be said for sending a little bit of a message early, but I agree. I don't think that it's quite a big enough gap to really send shivers down the spines of the rest of this crew. You see the chase pack there running very comfortably and staying patient, as you just said. Maybe not quite as many CBU jerseys as we expected to see towards the front.
No, but you did see a huge contingency of Wyoming. Almost all of their scoring team is right there, and they kind of have a flyer off front, kind of closing down that gap.
Cody Larson, the senior for South Dakota State, out in front there. He won the 4-mile Augustana Twilight meet just a couple of weeks ago. And that's what most of these teams have done, Ben, is take kind of a low-key early season meet. Again, maybe not competing the entire team or all the top dogs, but now we're starting to see the cards onto the table. And Larson, somebody who qualified in the steeplechase for South Dakota State to the NCAA championships and won that event at the Summit League as well, but he's maybe a little more comfortable in those true middle distances. 13:34 5K is Larson. Is that enough strength here over 8K?
You know, as you run through his accolades, he might do it. It's early days in cross country, and it's late days. I think coaches, there's a huge mindset of the idea that, hey, we're just gonna run a couple guys here and there, get ready for conference, hopefully make it through regionals, and then compete at the highest level at nationals. But there's also schools like SDSU that want to cut their teeth at a lot of these early races, get their guys some experience. As the list of names comes up, look, Wyoming 34, SDS 48, Minnesota top 3 right now, but I think, we're only a mile in.
Jacob White, you can see there for Wyoming, and kind of no man's land there in second. But boy, this clearly was the plan from the beginning for our leader, Cody Larson, 44th at the Midwest region a year ago, running 30:35, and was third in the Summit Cross Country Championship. So he's got a little bit of that pedigree, as we said, an NCAA qualifier as well. He was 63rd here at this race a year ago. He knows the course and says he certainly wants to improve upon that 63rd place finish that he had a year ago.
Well, he's definitely putting himself in the position to do that.
Multiple-time Summit League champion on the track, indoors and out, as we said, Cody Larson. And again, with that drone shot is so great. I love seeing that high level. Gives us a little bit better. Sometimes, as great as this front cam is, it can be hard to tell what the gap is. And you see these splits, see the clock, of course, ticking ever onward. That chase pack well back of our leader. And I think right now the target has to be on the back of Jacob White of Wyoming, who is the one running second there. The senior for the Cowboys was the NCAA qualifier in his own right over 5,000 meters. He's run 13:27, so those two don't seem to be intimidated by this 8K course at all.
No, you're right about that. And the one thing we haven't seen Cody do here at all is look back. We've gone around a lot of 90-degree, even 120-degree turns, and he just hasn't taken any peaks back, which kind of indicates he's running with a lot of confidence today.
It is still Cody Larson of South Dakota State. That was one of the big questions for me, Ben, is, so often we see somebody do this in cross-country races. Take it out early, and it can go a lot of different ways, as we see Larson ascending this hill, Jacob White working hard behind him as well. But, they can get swallowed up by the pack or extend that lead. Can you break the psyche of your competitors? But I love what you said. He's not looking back. He's confident. He knows this course. And it seems like he really, look, the other chase pack hasn't even crested the hill yet. Larson seems to be in pretty good contention here, just under 9 minutes in.
Yeah, but Jacob White, I think, has taken a little bit of a tactic approach. He's been patient, kind of closing down this gap. He looks fairly comfortable here, but I'll say that the main group back there, they're not that far away, and we still have a little bit of running left.
Well, I'll reiterate my point, and I'll defer to your distance running prowess, certainly, but there's a difference between making up ground, in kind of a metronomic way on the track, even on the longer distances, say at 10,000 meters, where you know exactly what the next meter holds. It's the same track that you just stepped on, and it's going to be flat, right? Maybe I'm stating the obvious, but there's more variables, I suppose, in cross country, and if Larson fades even a little bit on one of these hills, I agree. I think White is stalking him very well, and you said patience. Well, that's what's being exhibited at Chase Pack, and we'll get another good idea as we get our next split here coming up. But through that first mile, Cody Larson well in control.
Yeah, the shot I really like is them coming up this hill, and the one thing I noticed right away was that large contingency of CBU guys, that Cal Baptist is kind of slowly making their way as a big group to the front. I think Wyoming kind of had that early dominance, and now I think as the race is kind of unfolding, Cal is doing a good job of just slowly moving up their entire group.
Well, Jacob White, again, the senior, experience for him as well. He set personal best over 1,500, 5,000, and 10,000 meters on the track this year. That 10K personal best, 28:47. Came at the magical Azusa Pacific track there at the Brian Clay Invitational. I'm a little biased, Ben. Let's just point it out. You're a Minnesota alum. I'm an Azusa Pacific guy, so I always love seeing when people's personal best gets set at that Brian Clay Invitational. That's a really special one. But White is right there.
Yeah, he's made up this gap really well. I think he's been super calculated. I'm curious what kind of strategy he takes here. Is he going to wait for an uphill, a downhill, or is he just going to kind of collect himself once he's there?
Wyoming, as we said, won this team title a year ago, and you see White now coming on up. They made it to the national champion as well. Wyoming finishing towards the bottom, 30th overall. Maybe didn't have their best meet as a team at those national championships, but really that season started here at this Roy Griak. Now there are two up in front. Larson having some company with White there as well, and there is the pack. Just under 12 minutes into this one, you have to think somebody's going to start making a move.
Yeah, it's just the Roy Griak is just such an intimidating course with all of its undulations. I have a feeling that Wyoming came here to dominate, and that's kind of what they're doing right now. But the idea of doing it as a team and everybody sticking together kind of seems like what they're doing. But they're just letting Jacob White kind of run away with it. He's a 14:46 guy on the track from last year. He's broken 30 minutes in the 10K.
Ran 25:14 here a year ago to finish 8th as part of that winning Wisconsin team. And was 11th at the Mountain West Championships as well, before again going on to qualify as a team to those national championships. And hey, we talk about the region, we talk about kind of the Big Ten, and of course so many different conferences represented here, Ben, but I mean, talk a little bit about the national scene. This is really where we start to get into the meat of the season. We had the preseason rankings, and now we've had one in-season rankings on the national and regional level. But in addition to those regional championships, quote-unquote, the head-to-head battle can really matter. So even if someone like CBU, isn't running their full-strength team here, a win for Wyoming could go a really long way if they don't end up being an automatic qualifier out of regionals.
Man, as that course tracker and the elevation profile kind of comes on the bottom here, you can really see the challenging parts of this course with the big peaks and deep valleys. But Jacob White is kind of out here just putting on a clinic right now. But Trevor, to kind of get back to your point a little bit, I think some of the bigger questions is, especially for coaches, as they start mapping out their yearly schedule, are they going to rely on points for at large, or are they going to worry about that, head to head? And I think there's a lot of cheekiness that goes on inside, clubhouses and locker rooms of saying, hey, I have a ton of confidence. I'm Oregon, I'm Washington. I'm not going to run that much. I know I'm going to go to the regionals, and I'm just going to push my guys through, and we're going to get ready for the nationals. But I think when you start thinking about some of these other schools, they start thinking about, hey, where can I get team points to make sure that I get in, even if I don't have the best regional race?
Now, we've been talking about the uphills, and we'll see an ascent here shortly as White continues to pour it on. Look at that gap now. A big uphill coming. But, Ben, talk about the downhill. Sometimes that can really come into play, and it may take a little more energy to restrain yourself. You don't want to run wild either. I always love thinking about if you've got time after the meet here, go check out the downhill mile on YouTube from back in the day. Steve Scott, I think, ran something like 3:30 over the mile. I mean, it's crazy running downhill. So in your mind, is that a chance to power through but stay under control, or do you give up more energy by trying to stay more restrained?
I think it really depends on the runner that you are. So many guys who are 15, kind of mid-distance guys, they're strong, but it's still tough when you start going up and down. It kind of turns into more of a fartlek than anything else, than kind of that smooth 10K. I think the one thing about Griak that probably doesn't get talked about enough is the footing. The footing is a real challenge. As you can see, we've gone on some super smooth fairways, and then we've been on some, rooty, hard, rocky roads.
Going back to the weather, I think that's something that we can be thanking our lucky stars or the weather above. As you see now, CBU pack running has moved into the overall lead. Minnesota right there with them. South Dakota State. Those are the teams we talked about coming in, perhaps along with Wyoming. But, well, there it is now, counting them all up. So we'll do our best looking at those splits there. But as we thought, our main teams in contention through 3K here. You see the encouragement in the pack. But out in front, it is all Jacob White, right at 15 minutes dead through the first 3K. Larson about 4 seconds back, and then White's Wyoming teammate, Riker Holtzen. So call it the chase pack, about 20 seconds back. Is that enough through 3,000 meters? Is that a surmountable lead, or can White really start to cruise it home? What do you think here?
Oh, I think Jacob White just has to keep doing what he's been doing. Just good, solid running, but in control. He doesn't look like he's exerting too much effort. I think Cody's been holding really strong. Usually it's such a good shot of the Twin Cities here, but usually when you get past there's a little bit of like deflation that happens. You were out early, and maybe you just got eager. You wanted to put that big gap in there. You've had some really good training all summer, and you're just hungry to finally get back out there. I like that drone shot just to show how really strung out this race is, especially on this kind of 90-degree turn. You can see that pack has really kind of started to fall apart.
Well, and as you said, White has that 14:46 5,000-meter best over the cross-country distance, but full credit to him as he did run 13:27 on the track to qualify for the NCAA championships, where he ended up finishing 15th in that final. So call it a second-team All-American if you like, top 16, of course, there on the track. But just somebody with so much experience, the senior, and just no timidity. I mean, he is running very confidently and really doesn't seem to be giving up much on those hills. You see the rest of the crew coming on through here. That team battle, of course, will be so important and hard to keep track of as well. We have great timing set up, so we'll see those different splits. But what a beautiful day. And what I was starting to say, Ben, about the weather, even if it wasn't raining right now, if we had gotten rain this morning, that really changes, to your point, the footing. And so even as you maybe go from the grass to the hard dirt, a little bit rockier, it's a great course, but it's flat. It seems like it's really consistent, not flat overall, of course, as we see the altitude change there. But what I mean is there's not going to be big puddles and things like that. since we didn't get that rain that was forecasted.
Trevor, that's such a great point. But there's also the idea that they've changed the formatting with college being on Friday, and then we move to high school tomorrow. I think there's two things happening. There's a little less energy around these turns in terms of actual number of folks on the course, but it does allow for better footing overall. You haven't had those hundreds, maybe 1,000 high school kids that have just gone through the course and just muddied it up. This, as you can see, the footing is super nice.
Well, let's not forget about Cody Larson back there, and looking at their personal bests on the track, very evenly matched. If it does come down to maybe a finish, as you see this beautiful drone shot, boy, how green is that? It's so great to have the cross country out here on this golf course. But Larson's run 3:44 over 1,500 meters, 4:03 for the full mile. White has run 3:45 and 4:02 for the full mile. So those two both, have a little bit of speed in their legs, and clearly the strength as well, as they're both right around 13:30 over the 5,000 distance on the track. And for my money, I know, Ben, we're in a whole new era with super shoes and things like that, and your era was maybe a little bit right before that. But for my money, still, once you get in that 13:30, yeah, just by a hair, just 1 or 2 years. But really, when you get in that 13:30 range, to me, that's starting to be really impressive at the collegiate level.
Yeah, especially at the collegiate level. I think the undertone of Roy Griak to me is who did the homework and who really put in the miles during the summer. This is kind of where Roy Griak is, won or lost, is those guys who got up in the morning, got their mileage done, did some tempos, maybe went out and did some hills, but kind of stayed on it. They got done with the track season. Hopefully some of these guys went to nationals. If not, they made that regionals. They took their 2 weeks, and then they got right back into some training. And I'd imagine that this is kind of what Jacob White did this summer.
Well, Jacob White does know this course well. He's run it the last 3 years, and the senior trying to take the victory here. Can he lead his Wyoming Cowboys to another victory going back-to-back? We're going to talk about, on the women's side, a potential for a back-to-back victory for the Minnesota women. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But Wyoming coming out here after winning a year ago, and as we mentioned, White was 8th in that race. He ran 25:14. Now, of course, the time, not insignificant, but something to keep an eye on, as last year's 8th place finish, again, 25:14 for White.
Yeah, but this race may not be over. We're 22 minutes in, and with such a great drone shot, you can kind of see some other runners getting a little antsy back there and just slowly making up that groove. I think this is kind of Cody and White just have to stay strong and keep grinding this thing out.
Powering up those hills, and now that descent. When we look at that course tracker again, I think that's really going to come into play. You're exactly right. It's not over yet. Last year's champion Muhammad Guled of Utah Valley averaged about a 5-minute mile, in 24:55. But once again, it is the time, again, not insignificant, but it's all about getting the win. It's all about those points. And Jacob White seems well on his way to improving his 8th place finish from a year ago. And if he's able to take the victory, that 1 point will go a long way towards the team battle.
Yeah, and he gets to put his name with some great runners, right? You have Hassan Mead, who's won it. You have Lowy Lalang, who's won it. Some just phenomenal athletes who have come out here and won the Roy Griak Invitational.
Well, 8th to potentially 1st is quite the jump. As you see the course tracker there, not quite as aggressive ups and downs on the final meters here, but Cody Larson still running 2nd. He was 63rd a year ago, running 26:13. So he has mightily improved. You want to talk about summer training, putting in the miles. Larson is somebody who certainly seems to have done that. And boy, it really has been, Ben, just a 2-man race. really from the beginning. I mean, we let it shake out a little bit. Larson had the early lead. Now he may have some company there, but out in front, Jacob White still holding strong.
Yeah, and as you can see, we had a really good vantage point of the footing here, but then we have CBU kind of coming through. Cal Baptist has one or two runners up and over that hill, but kind of see how this shakes out for Wyoming. They were out to such a dominant start.
And such is the nature of cross country. We spend so much time, rightfully so, talking about the leaders and the battle up front, since that's what we're able to see. As you see, White digging really deep here, and he is showing no signs of slowing. This great finish line shot, but the team battle kind of gets sorted out after the fact, and it can be tough to know along the way. We see those splits, of course, but look at the battle behind White. His teammate trying to come up and get some big points there for Wyoming. Can they repeat as champions here at the 39th edition of this Roy Griak Invitational? It will be Jacob White taking the victory as he made a big move about halfway through. Larson still running strong there in second, Wyoming running third as well.
Yeah, phenomenal running by Jacob White. And same with Cody. He really hung strong there, mentally and physically, and just threw it down. But
well, Riker Holtzen coming up for third for Wyoming. That will be very big. Also finishing sixth, Mathis Chavand coming through there. Larson second, Holtzen third for Wyoming. Gabriel Guzman of CB through fourth, but now the grouping, you see that depth, 7th, 8th, and 9th for CBU. Marin, DeVry, and Ruiz, so we will start to shake this out. CBU down there in 12th as well. By my count, that is their top 5. Impressive pack running from CBU, but we will count all these up here shortly, but that's a good showing from them.
yeah, phenomenal.
And again, this is just the nature of cross country, Ben. I mean, it is kind of a mad dash, and then, you know, how many times have we seen, even at nationals, coaches with the notebook and the calculator out going, wait, okay, which guy, and the confusion, and yes, they did, no, they didn't. So that's kind of part and parcel of the sport, but it's what makes it so much fun is this team aspect. Jacob White, he's the champion. We know that. But it looks like CBU is going to get the job done on the team side of things, with Wyoming finishing second there on the strength of that 1-3-6, and Minnesota coming through for third.
Yeah, you had such a great point there, Trevor, in the idea that coaches are putting pen to paper and counting up names. There's a little bit of a couple unattached guys that kind of throw us for a loop, kind of wearing similar jerseys, but CBU did such a great job of just kind of keeping that pack together, right? You want your 1 and 5 guy to be as close as they can be, but in these early stages, I think as a coach, you'd rather see, you know, your 1-2 guys kind of holding back and kind of pulling that whole nucleus forward versus having 1 or 2 guys kind of flyers out front.
Cal Baptist showing why they're ranked number 16 in the nation, and again, still having yet to add Valentin Soka, 13:02 on the track, and representing Uruguay out there in Tokyo at the World Championships. Look, we don't have any inside information there if he is going to contest this cross-country season, but boy, if he does, that is certainly a big boon to the Lancers squad that finished 13th a year ago at the National Championships, and Coach Sean Smith, his second year, showing why Cal Baptist is quite the team to contend with on the regional and at the national level.
Yeah, Trevor, you make a good point, but there is that argument that if you're running, you know, world champs right now in September, that, you know, cross-country nationals in November is a long way away, and he might want a little bit of a break versus keeping that fitness going. And I think though making a world final means a ton of strength, it means you might be a little exhausted coming back. So I think that'll be up to kind of their coach and see how they move through. But they're off to a good start with this Roy Griak win.
Well, and not to deviate too much, but I was able to watch those preliminaries, and I'll be honest, Soka looked pretty darn good. I mean, I had my eye on him there, and he qualified just ahead of the likes of Jakob Ingebrigtsen and others, so he's out there mixing it up with the big boys. When we talk about experience, not just on the NCAA level, of course, NCAA's is, really an international type level field, and the quality is so incredible, but boy, what experience he'll have coming back, and this whole CBU team. But they get the job done, 39 points ahead of Wyoming. And Minnesota on their home course goes third. Let's hear from our winner.
And we are now at the finish line with the winner of that Merrill Fischbein men's 8K, Jacob White of Wyoming, 8th here a year ago. Tell us what went different today to give you were a commanding leader later on in the race.
Maybe I just took a slightly different strategy this time. I really got the work in the summer too, so I can have confidence in that, and just getting through.
This is a tough course, Jacob, as you know. There's a lot of turns. There's not a big hill, but just a lot of small rolling hills through this. How about wet spots today? There had to be some. We got quite a rain last night.
I'd say it wasn't that bad. We trained for this type of stuff, and I think it just makes it more fun, honestly.
So last year, 19th at regional, I believe, or 18th, 119th at the national meet. What's a goal for you now, really looking ahead?
Just as far as I can get. I owe it to my team and my coaches and everyone that's helped me get here, and I really want to do it for them and do it for what we've done as a program, and all my high school teammates and middle school teammates. And
well, you had a great race today. Went out, let Larson take the lead early, and just made up ground and had a great victory. So congratulations, Roy Griak, Invitational Champion 2025.
Thank you very much.
Well, the legendary Mike J there getting us a couple of words from our winner, Jacob White. 4 guys go under 25 minutes here, Ben, and led, of course, by Jacob White of Wyoming, 24:39. You mentioned it earlier, but boy, he adds his name to quite the list, even just over the last couple of years. Habtum Samuel of New Mexico won a couple of years ago, of course, has set collegiate records, and someone, going back a few more years, Connor Mance of BYU. I mean, this is really quite the echelon of names that Jacob White has just added his name to. Well, this was our start, and Ben talked about patience. That was the key for Jacob White, our eventual winner. You see Cody Larson there in the white. He upgraded as well, let it not be forgotten. 63rd a year ago, comes in for second and hangs on gamely as he had that lead. But now this was the point where Jacob White made his move, and you talk about not looking back. I don't think I saw a peek over the shoulder, Ben, from Jacob White. Once he took that lead, it was all over for the rest of the field. White coming through strong. Larson hanging on there for second as Wyoming goes 1-3. Cal Bap takes the overall victory.
Yeah, that was a fun race to watch, and I think the key words I heard in that interview was summer mileage. Summer mileage, especially for these early races. To be kind of on top and to show strength like that means you put in a lot of homework and you got out the door early on these hot summer days.
Well, you want to talk about Minnesota weather. How about Wyoming weather? That can be a bit all over the place as well. So there's just, like I said, that extra grit, I think, in cross country as we see the conclusion there of that Merrill Fischbein 8K for the men. And we see the women warming up there. We will preview that race shortly. And we'll take a quick break here, catch our breath after the first race over 2 days here. You're watching live on Runner Space and Big Ten Plus. I'm Trevor Fulkerson, joined by Ben Blankenship. There's our winner from the first race for the men. We'll be back for the women's collegiate race here at the Roy Griak Invite.
sixth and final round of the competition. She needs a big one here to get on the podium. Look at that release.
Yeah, can you hear
Feeling
me?
athletic? Get the Athletic app.
Ooh, $1.
Ah, good.
Oh, hey, jerk, give me that. I'm saving up for Runner Space Plus subscription. This baby put me over the top.
I wouldn't pay for that. I don't like to support stuff. Woo, stinky.
Dude, do you always throw away your socks? That's your Plus subscription right there.
Seriously?
With a Plus subscription, you'll gain access to all our live webcasts and the largest archive of running videos anywhere on the planet. Or you could just be like him